Pam Bondi is out as Attorney General of the United States. Here's a brief report on it. Listen to and watch. Clip number 4. Clip 4. Go.
Pam Bondi will soon leave her job as the Attorney General. She is going to get a different job within the administration. It doesn't sound like there is any bad blood between her and President Trump, but it does seem like they want her to go and do something else. And in an interim role, she will be replaced by Todd Blanche, who is currently her deputy at the Justice Department. So it doesn't sound like Blanche is being elevated long term to the Attorney General. There might be somebody else that the president wants to go in there. But President Trump soon will announce to the entire world that it is the end of Pam Bondi's time as the Attorney General. He still thinks that she is a great person and that she did a good job. And he still wants her in the fold because she will still be an important part of the administration, he tells me. But no longer as the top law enforcement officer of the United States. That, at least for a little while, is going to be Todd Blanche.
So that announcement has now been made. President Trump has announced that he has removed Pam Bondi from that position. Pam Bondi has confirmed that she is no longer the Attorney General of the United States of America, that Todd Blanche, who is currently a deputy Assistant Attorney General, will step in as the interim Attorney General for the United States. Pam Bondi has said that she will move forward to an unspecified role in the private sector. This is what she said. She didn't say the unspecified part. She just said to a role in the private sector that she will announce and explain a bit later. So I'm saying that it is an unspecified role. It's just one that she says it's in the private sector. And so following the announcement, as the report you heard just said, Todd Blanche will serve as the interim Attorney General, and he is a man who represented President Trump in other legal proceedings and in other areas. But some of the names that immediately have been floated as the next potential Attorney General of the United States include people like Lee Zeldin. And there's been some pushback on Zeldin's name being mentioned because he does not have prosecutorial history and experience necessarily. Another name that's being floated is former Judge Jeanine Pirro. A lot of you may be familiar with her from the Fox News television network, and she's currently the United States Attorney for the Washington, D.C. jurisdiction. And so some are saying that she could become the next Attorney General. There are other names. They're all speculative at this point. I would not expect necessarily to have a formal nomination before the midterm elections. Now, I could be wrong about that. Depending on who it is, it could have an impact on the midterm elections and create an issue. Maybe not. The president may be comfortable with proceeding with Todd Blanche through the midterm period, but suffice it to say, Pam Bondi is out. Now, I will tell you, I think this is a move that should have been made long ago. I think Pam Bondi should have been fired before Kristi Noem. And Kristi Noem, oh my goodness. I am not a fan of discussing stuff that's kind of like tabloidish, like fodder. But you got Kristi Noem, who the whole world pretty much knows. So I say this way, it's popularly known that she was engaged in an adulterous affair with Corey Lewandowski. Her recent hearings on Capitol Hill, you had elected officials asking her directly, are you in an affair with Corey Lewandowski? And she wouldn't say no. You know what I mean? She would not just say no. That's a simple question to answer. She went on to say all this gossip, that, gossip this, gossip that. But this dude is traveling around with her like she's coming to do stuff for ICE, and he's with her. He didn't work for ICE, and he's introducing himself to people on the ground as Kristi Noem's chief of staff. That's not a good look. This is just absurd. And then you have the recent revelations, sad revelations, of her husband, because Kristi Noem is still married. She's gallivanting around down in Washington, D.C., and her husband is back in North Dakota. And then you have the story that just came out, and he is, it's not an allegation, he confirmed that he has this cross-dressing thing he's doing. Guys, it's weird. This is another example, guys, why I'm telling you, being a Republican is not synonymous with being a Christian. And I'm not saying they are not saying, a lot of people say that Christian Noem's husband, Brian Noem, is a Christian. But he's cross-dressing and paying women money online to the tune of thousands of dollars. I mean, it's ugly, man. It's ugly. But Pam Bondi, in my view, should have been terminated even before her. So, and this has nothing to do with her personally. I don't know Pam Bondi personally. She might be a very nice lady, but she has not performed well in her position. And a lot of the problems with the Trump administration have followed from her. For example, I got the Epstein files on my desk. There are no Epstein files. Oh, let me release that. I mean, it's just sad. And in addition to that, what about all of the people that we have evidence of their corruption and their misdoings from 2016 and 2020? Is anybody going to be held accountable for that?
As we watch world events unfold and fulfill Scripture, it's hard to believe anyone could doubt God and His Word are real. And yet there are so many who either question or completely refuse to believe it. The God Who Speaks is a 90-minute documentary that hits the doubt head-on with evidence that proves God is real and His Word is the ultimate authority. Watch it anytime and invite others to watch with you. Just visit stream.afa.net. That's stream.afa.net.
Children, of course, are given to parents by God, not to the state. Children don't belong to the state, and we need to make sure that those lines are very clearly protected in an increasingly secularized culture where the government has not only tried to make the church completely irrelevant, but basically replace parents.
Jenna Ellis in the morning, weekdays at 7 Central on American Family Radio.
Christ's Passion Week. This is David Wheaton, host of The Christian Worldview. While most of the focus this week is rightly placed on Jesus' crucifixion on Friday and resurrection on Sunday, there were other moments of great significance, such as his triumphal entry into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, cleansing the temple on Monday, and his Olivet Discourse on Tuesday. Here's an idea. Set aside time each day this week to read chapters from the Gospels about Christ's road to the cross. And may this be your conclusion. It is a trustworthy statement deserving full acceptance that Christ Jesus came into the world to save sinners. Hear our most recent program on Easter week at thechristianworldview.org, and then tune in this Resurrection weekend for a special program on Christ the Redeemer, Christ the Victor.
Listen to The Christian Worldview with David Wheaton, Saturday mornings at 8 Central on American Family Radio.
They're coming for your family, not with guns, not with armies, but with laws, with lawsuits, with ballots and bureaucrats. Parental rights are under attack. Marriage is being redefined. Your values, they want them silenced, and they're counting on you to do nothing. But here's the thing, we're not backing down. I'm Walker Wildman, and AFA Action is in the fight, in the legislature, in the courtroom, and at the ballot box. We're stopping bad legislation, we're challenging activist judges, and through iVoter Guide, we're helping Christians vote like it matters, because it does. Thousands of families are already standing with us, and I believe the American family is still worth fighting for. But we can't do it without you, and we need your help today. Visit afaaction.net right now. Give today. Join us on the front lines, because the other side isn't slowing down, and neither can we. afaaction.net. Your voice, your values, your vote.
I'm Dr. Ray Rooney. The mission of American Family Association is to inform, equip, and activate individuals and families to strengthen the moral foundations of American culture and give aid to the church here and abroad in its task of fulfilling the Great Commission. AFA aims to evangelize the lost and disciple the believer.
Thank you for standing with the American Family Association as we seek to stop the erosion of godly values.
Brown Jackson being the lone vote in this textbook case of viewpoint discrimination that the court ruled 8-1. I mean, her position was so insane, not even Sotomayor joined it. You know? And I'm talking about the case of Ms. Childs against the state of Colorado concerning counseling children who had unwanted same-sex attraction and the ability to encourage them to embrace God's design for them, you know? Not even Sotomayor would agree with her. Elena Kagan didn't agree with her. And thinking about that, then you have this birthright citizenship case that I talked about yesterday that's at the court now. And listening to the oral arguments and reading transcripts of exchanges, it's remarkable to me how lost in the sauce people can be. With an amendment, the 14th Amendment was clearly drafted to overturn the egregious decision of the Supreme Court in the Dred Scott case. How do you get from surely the children born to African slaves are citizens of the United States of America, born in the United States of America, are citizens of the United States of America. How do you go from there to saying, you know, Chinese billionaires can drop anchor babies in the United States and they become automatic American citizens? How do you get there? And here's one of the lines of audacity, because you have John Roberts. If he is not an example of what you do not want your sons to grow up to be. I mean, this man does not display any type of courage of conviction at any point. I will never forget the about face he did in the case with Russo out of Louisiana concerning the health codes necessary that hospitals or places that are going to perform baby murder, they at a minimum had to have the cleanliness standards of a surgical center. And this man literally said that in his position is we need to maintain the stasis of the court with a century of precedent. I'm like, dude, you're saying you want to adhere to long-held precedent, and a precedent that literally would destroy the country. Literally. Now, of course, Congress could pass laws to make it more clear, but considering the division in Congress, what's the likelihood of that happening? But you literally have these people considering whether or not they are willing to embrace a regime that says that all is necessary. You basically are limiting the subject to the jurisdiction thereof component of the 14th Amendment Citizenship Clause. Because the clause simply says that in order to be a U.S. citizen, you have to be born in the country and subject to our jurisdiction. Case in point, that's it. It's almost like, well, if you're born here, you can be a citizen of our country if you want to be. Even if the moment of your birth, you are absconded back to another country, and you live there until you're about, 18, 19, 20 years old. Then you come back and utilize the American franchise to do the bidding of your true homeland. Does that make sense to anybody? Does that make sense to anybody? Being born in the country, obviously a vitally important component. Being subject to our national jurisdiction, also a vitally important component. Coming to our country in violation of our national jurisdiction is the exact opposite of being subject to our national jurisdiction. Oh man. But this is where we are. This is where we are. Now, if Congress wanted to do something about it, let's say the Supreme Court rules against President Trump and his executive order, Congress could overrule, just like the 14th Amendment's passage sought to overrule the Supreme Court. But we're talking about the same Congress that can't even pass the Save America Act. So put two and two together, right? You have a Supreme Court considering, hey, you know what? Anybody who's born here, y'all come now, you hear? And then you have a Congress that won't pass a bill that says in order to vote in our country, you got to be a citizen and prove it. How does that end up? You tell me. You tell me. How does that end up? You tell me. Now, I mentioned this earlier. Unless there is a significant course correction in our nation, we can expect similar things to transpire. Back in February, Buckingham Palace in England, King George himself offered a celebratory greeting to what he called Muslims in the UK, the Commonwealth, and all around the world concerning Ramadan. Yet today, shortly before I came on the air here, Buckingham Palace released a statement saying there will be no message concerning Resurrection Sunday coming from King George this year. Not gonna happen. Not gonna happen. In case you're not aware, King George did issue a statement last year. Sorry, I keep saying King George. Forgive me. Well, I got the 250th anniversary on my mind. King Charles, thank you. I keep saying King George wrongly. King Charles. Look, I told y'all, something happened on July 4th. I don't have to keep up with them people. I don't have to. The reason why I'm keeping up with them right now is because, yeah, people are telling me, it's King Charles. Abe, thank you, guys. Thank you. I was saying it wrongly. Thank you. And just last year, he did it in 2025. And he had all kinds of criticism from the Muslim population in England. So to avoid that criticism, if you notice, there's a familiar pattern that goes on. To avoid all of the backlash concerning it, it's perfectly fine for him to commemorate Ramadan, but he can't say anything concerning Jesus' resurrection and the celebration that Christians all around the world, but also Christians in the UK and in the Commonwealth, we recognize as the defining feature of our faith. In many ways, guys, Europe and the UK are where we will be unless there's a significant course correction. Remember, I mentioned to you North Carolina's governor. What did I tell you about them? Their commemoration. New Jersey's governor, who campaigned as a moderate, but is not governing in that fact. What goes to hang out at a mosque that was founded by a man who had been involved in terroristic engagements, funding for Hamas specifically. I want you to be aware of this. And one of the things that President Trump said last night, which was a noteworthy comment, is that Operation Epic Fury was undertaken in order to prevent our children and grandchildren from having to fight a far broader, more brutal, more bloody war later on. Which that's something that has to be considered, because there's no one who would deny the reality that, yeah, the Iranians are trying to get weapons and do things that they're doing because they have a zealous, murderous view of the world. And they want to, quote, bathe the world in blood. That's what they want to do. So how long will it be until that actually happens? You know? And so when you see kind of the repetitious efforts, there was a festival in France that they just decided to cancel because a lot of the Muslims in France objected to the festival. When you see this happening, you see a pattern happening throughout history. Bill Federer shared the pattern. You know, when Zohran Mamdani, in his speech a couple weeks ago, said that, you know, his faith includes, you know, Muhammad traveling to what's it, Mecca as a migrant. Well, he left out the part, and yeah, by the way, 5 years after you showed up there wasn't a Jewish person left in the city. You leave that part out. And I'm saying in many ways, we're experiencing similar things here. I shared with you guys before. When Israel Wayne was on the show, talked about Christians who had the audacity to try to travel into Dearborn to evangelize, how they were stoned on our own soil. No-go zones in England, but we have no-go zones in our own country, developing. And the purpose of this is not to foment any type of fear, trepidation, but to communicate when things like this happen. The jihadist mindset sees that the head of the Church of England, King Charles, the monarch of England, refusing to celebrate Jesus' resurrection, to make a proclamation publicly celebrating Jesus' resurrection, while immediately prior to doing so, commemorating Ramadan, they see that as an indication of submission. That's what I'm trying to tell you. They see it as, oh, because this is our country now. That's how they see it. Whether it's factual or not, that is how they view it. And it really, really makes me wonder, does King Charles really know what he's involving himself in? Now, I know in many ways the monarchy is symbolic in England. Not in many ways, it is symbolic. It doesn't have any, you know, true governing power necessarily. But this type of activity is emboldening to the Islamist mind. And that's why I've been saying that there needs to be more robust and honest conversation in our own country about what really, truly is the animating and driving ideology. Because too many people around the world, and including in our own country, are ignorant about what they really believe. And it's that type of ignorance that's allowed ridiculous arguments that supported the open borders policies that we have. And experts are discussing in our own country, people that call themselves experts, the reality of terror cells in our own country. Did we just open the door to that in our own country? I told you guys that we've learned that the man who drove his vehicle into the Jewish synagogue and child care center in Michigan, he drove from Dearborn. And it was the brother of a Hezbollah commander. I'm sure that was just a coincidence, right? Sure, that was just a coincidence. With that being said, I'm reminded of the truth of Acts 27, that God has determined before time the boundaries of our habitation and the times in which we would live. And all of the things that we're discussing, the foolishness du jour and more, none of it surprises the Lord. And in this time where the whole world really is invited to really pause and reflect on the reality of the incarnate Christ, his sinless life, his death, not for his own sins, but his death for the sins of mankind. His resurrection demonstrating his power even over death, provides the necessary light for us to embrace and have the privilege of, though we're in the world, we don't have to be of the world. My prayer for our audience here, man, is that we carry this forward into our everyday encounters. and that the resurrection of Christ Jesus would anchor our life engagements, and that we would live the proclamation, let the redeemed of the Lord say so, that we who have been redeemed, we are willing to say so verbally, and in addition to our verbal proclamations, that our lives declare that we have been redeemed.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
90.5 KTXG Greenville, Dallas.
This can be a time of trial. It can be really difficult, but it can also be the most fun and the best years of your parenting.
Dr. Jessica Peck is a pediatric nurse practitioner as well as a professor